But he is, again, knowledgeable, wise.
Incredibly sharp, incredibly probing, incredible command of the details.
He is sharp. He is on top of things.
If you ever needed proof that politics can get weird, messy, and downright theatrical, look no further than Senator Eric Schmidt's recent takedown of the Biden administration's narrative on the president's cognitive state. And honestly, it wasn't even a takedown in the traditional sense. He didn't yell, he didn't grandstand, he didn't pull a dramatic "I yield the remainder of my time." Nope. He just pressed play, literally. He rolled the clips and the Democrats' own words did the heavy lifting. By the way, before we dive into the chaos, we just launched this channel and we're going to be covering debates, hearings, and political drama without the usual partisan fog. So if you believe the truth isn't red or blue, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and let's jump right into it. So here's the situation. The Senate held a hearing to discuss President Biden's cognitive decline. Yes, that conversation everyone has been pretending not to have for, what, 2 years now? And guess what the Democrats did? Nothing. Literally nothing. They didn't show, they didn't bring witnesses, they didn't push back. They basically put up a big "out to lunch" sign on the committee door.
Minority did not call any witnesses for today's hearing. They have chosen to ignore the hearing as they chose to ignore President Biden's mental decline.
And if you've ever wondered what political avoidance looks like, that was it. Silence, empty chairs, and Schmitt standing there like a teacher taking attendance for a class that clearly didn't study for the exam. But Schmitt didn't come empty-handed. He walked in with receipts, video receipts, a curated montage of some of the most painfully awkward, overly polished, and now utterly unbelievable statements from top Democrats and Biden administration officials. And seeing all those clips back to back,
President Biden's mental decline, but we do have a short video of some previous statements from Biden administration officials and Democrat Party officials telling us not to believe our lying eyes. We can play the video.
Phew, that was something. It felt like watching a greatest hits album of denial. You had people insisting, with straight faces, that the president was sharp, probing, tireless, brilliant, laser focused. One official even said the hardest part of meeting with Biden was preparing for him. Sure, okay, and I'm the Queen of England.
Does the president have the stamina, physically and mentally, do you think, to continue on even after 2024?
Don, you're asking me this question. Oh my gosh, he's the president of the United States. You know, I can't even keep up with him.
The most difficult part about a meeting with President Biden is preparing for it, because he is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
I can testify because I've been working very closely with this president for the past 2 years. I've been knowing him for 30 years. And I'm telling you, this guy's tough. He's smart. He's on his game.
Joe Biden has vision. He has knowledge. He has a strategic thinker.
The president is focused. He's detail-oriented. He's always thinking about the big picture.
He is engaging. He is capable. He has an incredible record as president.
And I'm often with him on foreign trips. He's at the top of his game.
So he has a vision, he has knowledge, he has judgment, he has...
And the funny part? At the same time, these officials were out there on camera gushing about Biden's brilliance. Behind the scenes, there were reports, credible ones, that top Democrats were quietly discussing how to remove him from the ticket as early as 2023. That's right. Publicly, they were like, he's perfect, he's unstoppable, he's physically and mentally on fire. But privately, the party elites were apparently passing around the political equivalent of a get well soon card and looking at the exit doors. NBC's Jonathan Allen and The Hill's Amy Parnes even wrote that there were hush-hush meetings among Democratic officials trying to game out Biden's withdrawal. But here's where it got even stranger. After months of telling us that Biden was perfectly capable, suddenly the messaging shifted. Instead of portraying him as superhuman, they pivoted to calling him wise, seasoned, experienced, a man of deep knowledge.
But he is, again, knowledgeable, wise.
Incredibly sharp, incredibly probing, incredible command of the details.
He is sharp. He is on top of things.
There is nothing to these challenges, these suggestions that somehow he's not sharp and he's not capable.
We see Joe Biden up close. We know how attuned he is to the issue.
And you're going to see how smart he is and the experience he has.
I say his age is an asset.
Aha!
He's wise.
Yes, he's wise. He has wisdom. He has experience.
And his experience, because of his age and his wisdom, has been invaluable to this country.
And listen, nobody's against wisdom. Wisdom is great. But when politicians make a sudden pivot from he's as sharp as a tack to he's wise because of his age, you can practically hear the gears grinding in the background. While all these officials were insisting Biden was mentally solid, guess who pleaded the fifth during House Oversight Committee depositions about the president's cognitive decline? Several of Biden's own aides, including Anthony Bernal, Annie Tomasini, and brace yourself, his own doctor. Look, pleading the fifth doesn't automatically prove guilt, but pleading the fifth about the president's mental state, that's not a good look. That's the kind of thing that makes people go, wait, who's actually running the country? Which, ironically, is exactly what Senator Schmitt asked later in the hearing. And speaking of not a good look, how about the report that former White House spokesman Ian Sams only met Biden in person twice over 2 years? Twice. The guy whose job is literally to speak for the president. Twice. If you're supposed to be the public face, shouldn't you actually see the face? So Schmitt rolls these clips, the bubble bursts, and then he turns to witness Chris Wald and asks the question millions of Americans have been wondering: who was actually running the country under Joe Biden?
Mr. Wald, given sort of the role that you played in trying to provide more transparency of what happened during the 4 years under Joe Biden, who was running the country under Joe Biden? Let's just take the last 2 years.
It's a great question, Senator, and at some level, I'm not the right witness for this hearing. I mean, there should be members of the media here, maybe some of your Senate colleagues who had known the president over the years and obviously had close proximity during the time of his administration, and obviously his staff. I think, sort of align with your previous question, there is a real consideration here on authentication. And in my time in the first Trump White House, there was an exhaustive process to determine how paper flowed into the Oval and when the president had given his assent to a certain action. That was through, in fact, 2 different policy channels, the staff secretary, and then there was also an office, essentially of policy management, guiding the flow of documentation. If the Biden administration staffers and personnel wanted to put this to bed, they could very easily dispel all of this by saying, here are the documents that show the president assented to these actions.
According to the committee, there's no solid record showing Biden himself approved all the executive actions issued under his name. None. Instead, the report suggests that his inner circle, top advisors, staff, even his physician, may have coordinated efforts to mislead the public about his cognitive health. That's not a small allegation. That's a call the Department of Justice level allegation, and that's exactly what they did. They recommended certain actions be treated as null and void, and even referred Biden's doctor to the DC Board of Medicine for potential wrongdoing. Think about how serious that is. Doctors don't get referred to medical boards because of a typo. That only happens when someone believes something went seriously wrong. But Schmitt wasn't done, not even close, because there's one group of people who've skated through all this with zero accountability: the media. So he turned the spotlight on them and handed the floor to former Trump press secretary Sean Spicer. And Spicer didn't hold back. He laid out how, during the Trump administration, the media was obsessed with questioning Trump's cognitive state. They ran stories, interviews, panels, speculation, conjecture, you name it.
Ask you alluded to this, but the media, so desperate to make sure President Trump never got back into office. Of course, you saw the lawfare that took place, but then, of course, this narrative that Joe Biden was fine, don't believe your lying eyes, until that they couldn't deny it anymore based on the debate. Could you just kind of compare that to your experience when you were, press secretary for President Trump, to sort of the inquiries that were made daily about his mental acuity versus the inability to do that during the 4 years under Joe Biden?
Well, Senator, in many cases, there was no inquiry. They would just run with a story, having guests on that would question his physical or mental acuity, speculate on it, bring guests on that would speculate it. We would often then push back on those kind of stories. That's in vast contrast to the lack of any kind of curiosity that existed throughout the 4 years of President Biden. And I think the difference was they would seize on the simplest thing with President Trump, whereas in President Biden's case, there was multiple issues of physical, mental confusion, him going in the wrong direction, him falling down, him misunderstanding an event or not being able to finish the sentence. That was never the case with President Trump. They were almost manufacturing instances in his case, without actually trying to get to the bottom of a story or inquire within the press office to get our...
People see the inconsistency. They see the selective scrutiny. They see officials and media figures saying one thing in public and acting completely differently behind closed doors. And the big takeaway from Schmidt's hearing wasn't just that Biden may not have been fully in charge. It's that the entire system around him seemed invested in making sure nobody ever found out. All of this leads to the ultimate question. What else don't we know? If aides, advisors, and even the president's doctor won't give straight answers, that's not just a Biden problem. That's a system problem. That's a transparency problem. That's a democracy problem. And Schmidt's hearing didn't solve everything, but it finally put the contradictions front and center on tape, where nobody could spin them away. So what do you think? Is this a case of political damage control gone too far? A failing system propping up a president who isn't fully present? Or is it something deeper, a wake-up call about how much power unelected staff really have in Washington? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this is a conversation the country needs to have. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next round of political insanity. And as always, keep thinking.